consider those documents that were found in the garage next to his Corvette. I was going to say Ferrari, but no, I stopped myself. He doesn't have that much money. That would be his son who had that kind of money. And the brother, right? The son who is in court today, which we'll have to talk about. So Biden is not in any kind of trouble. No, Robert Hur's not willing to go after him at all because he's too senile. He's too feeble. He's too, quote, according to Hur's report, too much of a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Okay, do what you want with that. Like either you say he's a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory running our country, or you can infer that they're coming up with excuses so as not to actually prosecute him. Either way, not good. New revelation today that, and this is thanks to a FOIA request from the Heritage Foundation, the oversight committee there that's looking into everything that happened. Guess what? It was discovered that in the transcripts, because, we can't hear this, he's using executive order. You're not allowed to hear any of his conversation with Robert Hur. Well, the White House went through and omitted things like and the use of the term I. I mean, this is effectively the doctoring of a potentially criminal transcript. What, to make him look better? Really? Can you imagine if the Trump team did this? Can you imagine the hell that you'd have to pay if Trump's team dared to alter a transcript so as to make Trump appear better and lose the ums and the I's, etc.? And remember, they are not allowing you to hear these transcripts. He's using an executive order. And it's getting backed up by his whole team, which is a whole other issue, right? Like somebody's going to take real issue with that because it's not right. The public should have a right to hear some of this stuff. Anyway, this was Robert Hur not too long ago saying that, basically he committed a crime, but they couldn't prosecute. Watch.
Based on the facts and anticipation of defenses presented in your report, could a reasonable juror have voted to convict?
As I said in the report, some reasonable jurors may have reached the inferences that the government would present in its case in chief at trial.
So a reasonable juror could have voted to convict based on the facts that you presented?
Correct.
Yeah. But for some reason, it's not happening. And now we can't hear the tapes either. So there you go. Unbelievable. I mean, it is so one-sided. This is the problem, and this is the scary thing. I mean, that's when, there's all this talk of civil war, and we don't mean in the violent sense of 1865. What we're talking about here is just a divide that's so great, and the danger here being that you really do go full-on republic, banana republic, where you have one team in charge calling all the shots, and anybody who dares to push back in any way, shape, or form, well, they're toast. You know what? They're going to sue you. They're going to put you behind bars. They have every right to do so because you are part of the opposition and you can't oppose this particular regime. Hey, Maxine Waters just said it, right? She just said it. And she's setting up something. It's alarming. It's alarming. Again, considering they're not going after him, Joe Biden, because he's just a feeble old man, can you not ask yourself again, is that election interference? I mean, they had every reason to go after Hillary Clinton. And don't forget, they chose not to. They chose not to. Why? Because, it would be bad for America. It's bad for the system if you go after a candidate. This was James Comey explaining that at the time. Back in 2016, when it was discovered that, yes, in fact, she committed a crime because she was having her government emails on her own private server. That was a problem. And yet they didn't do squat. Remember, let's listen to Comey.
Although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
And yet, look what was brought against Donald Trump. They went after him on a financial misdemeanor, accusing him of paying off this woman and having her sign an NDA in order to protect his family from the emotional turmoil that they were already going through plenty. Maybe, if you want to argue, was this helping the campaign? Well, it probably helped the campaign, but don't forget, you can still make a very solid argument that it was helping him from a personal perspective, okay? So they take this finance violation, this misdemeanor, and then they turn it into something far larger, the felony, even though the Federal Election Commission never actually found any kind of crime there. I mean, if you really want to talk about potential federal election crimes, can we not talk about the dossier that Hillary Clinton's team bought and paid for? Her lawyers, by the way, Perkins Coie was the law firm that hired that group, bunch of former Wall Street Journal investigative reporters that went out and hired that ex-British spy, Christopher Steele, who went and hired some people that, by the way, the U.S. suspected of being Russian spies. I'll throw that out there. So crazy. And they come up with this concocted story, which was completely discovered to be totally untrue. I could have told you that, and I did when I read the dossier myself, because you know what? Intel reports don't actually read like they belong in the National Enquirer. Anyway, this one really did. And yet, Hillary never paid any kind of price for that one. Right? Using campaign funds for that kind of stuff. I mean, they did at the time say it wasn't really right, but blah, blah, blah. It all went away, right? It gets swept under the rug because unless it's your opponent, unless you're a Republican, they're not going to go after you. And I point this out because I think it's really important to think about. It's not just Trump. I mean, granted, he's willing to take things on in ways that maybe a lot of regular folks are not willing to take on, right? He said he'll run from jail if he has to. He just told us that. But it doesn't matter. They would do it to anyone. They started saying similar stuff about Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley. They went to the race card, of course, and they said all kinds of horrendous things about both of them when they thought that they were a threat. I mean, George Bush is not now, like the Bush family is suddenly ingratiated, right? They're great now because they feel sort of nostalgic in comparison. So the Democrats are okay with them. But the truth about that really has a lot to do with the fact that the Bushes no longer have any power. This is a new party. This is a MAGA party, right? This is Make America Great Again. And that's why Joe Biden wants to keep reminding you how bad it is. Despite 75 million Americans voting for Donald Trump last time, I think many, many more Americans are going to vote for him going forward. I think that it reminds me of 2016 all over again. It's a giant, you know what, Michael Moore said this well, right? Michael Moore actually said it would be a giant FU to the establishment. And that's what you're seeing. A lot of people that might have been on the cusp, even people that were maybe going to vote for RFK Jr., I suspect now they are going to vote for Donald Trump because they're so sickened by what the system has become.